My guest today on the Dan's Talks podcast is Ivan Wilzig, who is one of the more prominent people in the Hamptons, who is currently not in the Hamptons. I'm talking to him from another venue far away, but we'll talk about his coming out here. He built a castle and lives in there, I guess, in the summer. And it's quite something, and he holds probably the most wonderful party, I guess once a year. You've been doing it now for a very long time, maybe 15, 20 years. I went to some of the early ones. I'm old enough to be your father, so I got to be 60 when you're 40. So I very much enjoyed it. I don't know if it changed a whole lot, but I wanted to start by asking you how you chose to come out to the Hamptons and why build a castle.
Well, I have a very unique story. I always tell people that I think I'm the first person from New Jersey to discover the Hamptons.
Well, you're not. I am.
It was over 50 years ago. I was in college, and because I had college friends from Long Island, I grew up in New Jersey. I had college friends from Long Island, and I asked you where you spend your summers, and they said the Hamptons. And I was like, what's the Hamptons? Where's the Hamptons? What's that all about? So they told me. I said, okay. So I took a friend of mine. I think we were maybe seniors in high school, maybe not even college. I borrowed my mother's beat-up Delta 88. We headed out to the Hamptons, not knowing a thing about it. We wound up, at the time, West Hampton was the hot spot, both for clubbing and for the beach, for singles. So,
Joel.
but we had no idea. So we decided to explore it all in one weekend. So we drove from West Hampton to Montauk, stopped at every single town, village, inlet along the way, checked every single beach along the way. At night, we did the reverse. The other person would drive. We went back and wanted to see what the nightlife was like because we didn't know where the hot spot was. We went to every single nightclub from Montauk backwards to West Hampton. So meanwhile, we had taken our luggage and deposited it all in and checked into a hotel in Amagansett. And so that was once we discovered that West Hampton was the place not only for Morgan's Beach on Dune Road, but for Marrakesh, the legendary nightclub, we wound up driving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth from Amagansett to West Hampton, one time during the day to go to the beach, and then again to change in Amagansett and go back at night to dance. So it was quite something. When I say I think we were the first from New Jersey, because the entire weekend, I never saw another license plate from New Jersey. And being novices and curious about how the rich and famous lived, we wanted to see some of these giant homes behind the hedges that you couldn't even see from the street. So we pretended we got lost, and we would drive all the way down somebody else's driveway through the gates to the front of the house and say, we're lost. Do you know how to get to the beach? Or do you know how to get to town? Or do you know how to get to this? And they'd say, yeah, make a left, you go around this set. And they would see the New Jersey plate and go, you're really lost. Don't you know there's a beach, the Jersey Shore is much closer to you than the Hamptons? I said, sure, I know, but we want to see what the Hamptons is like.
You fell in love with the place.
Oh, yeah, fell in love with it, never went back to the Jersey Shore ever again. So now I've been, yeah.
Fast forward to when you bought the property and decided to build a castle, complete with drawbridge, I think, and
moat and dragons and gargoyles and griffins and even a dungeon. Yeah, everything a real castle in Europe has.
And it's high on a hill and surrounded by woods, I think.
Oh, it's the only place in the entire Hamptons that's above sea level. That part of Watermill is 500 feet above sea level, and it's the only spot where you're looking down at the water instead of straight across farmland or a flat beach. So it's spectacular. The sunsets there are out of this world.
On Deerfield Road in Watermill, but you can't see it from the street. But then you started having this annual party where you invited everybody.
Well, yes, it was either to celebrate one thing, another, or both things. It was either to celebrate my new single that came out, because I'm a recording artist. I make dance music. My first my new music video that came out, a reality show that I was on called Who Wants to Be a Superhero, that Stan Lee produced, a party to celebrate that episode and that season. And of course, most importantly, the Peaceman Foundation, a private charity that I established to look for, to battle hate crime and to look for cures and treatments for PTSD. Since my late father was an Auschwitz survivor and I had 59 members of my family murdered by the Nazis, they didn't even have that diagnosis, PTSD, then, but he suffered headaches, migraines, nightmares, and in spite of that, he overcame it. He had a mild case, you could say, because he lived to become one of the greatest businessmen in American history.
I know. So, you have a wonderful book called Unstoppable. And I want to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But I've come there when you wear a cape and a skin-tight outfit and you sing, and everybody loves it.
Well, I developed that character, Peaceman, because I was wearing capes after being a banker for 20 years, working in the family business. Once it was sold, I became an artist and dancing and was able to use more of my creative ability. My logo, my trademark, it all was Peace and Peaceman. So I had these couture capes designed, silk capes with huge Swarovski peace signs on the back, and I became known as Peaceman. That's also the name of the foundation, and all my music is, I carved a certain niche for myself, which was to recreate all the anti-war songs and the peace songs and the social activist songs from the 60s, from the Woodstock days. Yep. And turn slow, iconic rock ballads into high-energy dance records. Nobody had ever done it before. I started it with John Lennon's Imagine, and it led to a 20-year career in the music business, recreating those peace songs that went with my charity, my foundation, and my music.
Some of them hit the Billboard charts, as I recall.
All of them have made one Billboard chart or another, and one of them went top 10.
Which one was that, Imagine?
No, it was Hare Krishna. I took the most famous mantra in the world, every yoga enthusiast has heard of and knows, or people that study transcendental meditation and the like. And I rewrote the words. I took a religious Hindu prayer, probably, and I rewrote the words because I'm also a songwriter, besides a singer. And I changed the words to be not about Krishna and God and the light and love, but more about universal love and brotherhood. And used in the video too. I took an entire Hare Krishna temple in Coconut Grove in Florida here, and they came. The children, the parents, the grandchildren, the entire community came to be in my video. We filmed it in a hair salon that looked like we were in India, that we were in a temple, an Indian temple, instead of a beauty parlor, and it was just perfect. And we had sitar playing. It was a fusion. What made that song my biggest hit is that it was a fusion of Eastern music and Western music. We had the electronic drum programming that you need to make a dance track, and we had the sitar and the harmoniums from the Eastern part of the world to create the fusion of Eastern, authentic Eastern music played with instruments and musicians and DJs doing their magic with electronic, with synthesizers and things like that. And the combination became a big hit. People love it.
Hundreds of people come to your parties. It's a wonderful thing.
Several parties have had over 1,000 people in attendance.
Talk about how your dad came over to this country in the book, which has become a bestseller in its category. There's a picture of him on the ship in front of the Statue of Liberty, and
yes. I have good news since the time that I saw you last summer. Unstoppable was not only #1 in Amazon under the Jewish biography category, But most recently, just now before year end, was declared by PwC the new logo for Price Waterhouse. They declared it the best business book of the year.
Well, it's quite a story. He was.
So it's not just a Holocaust memoir. Unstoppable is the ultimate immigrant tale, and it shows how you can overcome adversity and trauma, no matter what hand you've been dealt and what misfortune you've gone through in life. This book gives hope and is therapeutic for anyone who reads it.
There's a particular section of that I've read that I thought he would ask you about, where he had come here with about 10 cents or $20 in his pocket, surviving Auschwitz by hook and by crook, however he could. And then he started working down in the Lower East Side and became a banker and became an enormously successful one with many branches. And there was a particular part of the story that I remember about him facing off against the regulators who were going to prevent him from something and rolling up his sleeve. And I wondered if you could tell that part.
But just after facing, after Forbes magazine wrote about my father and the battle that he fought against the Federal Reserve, he was the first person in history to sue the Federal Reserve because they came up with a law at the time, which is no longer law. My father was just ahead of his time, like other companies were. And they wanted to separate, it was called the Bank Holding Company Act. And they wanted to separate banks, commercial banks, from all other forms of commerce. So after an amazing life of going from shoveling snow and being a traveling salesman and working in Brooklyn sweatshops and becoming a traveling salesman, like Benny Loman in Death of a Salesman, he then invested in the stock market and eventually took over two of the most traditionally anti-Semitic businesses in America, certainly still in the 60s and early 70s. And that was commercial banking and oil and gas production. And he became president after waging two proxy fights. He became president, chairman of the board, and CEO of a New York Stock Exchange listed oil and gas producing company called Wilshire Oil Company of Texas. And then they took over the Trust Company of New Jersey, a full-service commercial bank headquartered in Jersey City. And he grew that bank into a multi-billion dollar institution, which was eventually sold 1 year after his death to North Fork Bank in Long Island, that everybody knows there. We sold to North Fork, and then 2 years later sold to Capital One, and that's how we got out of the banking business.
But there was this one time when he said that he sued them, and he went to visit one of the executives at the Federal Reserve.
What scene you're talking about? He rolls up his sleeve, he shows them the tattoo number, and it says, Hitler didn't frighten me. The Federal Reserve is nothing compared to you, to what I face. I'm going to take you to court, and that's what he did, all the way to the Supreme Court.
Talk a bit.
The case is still used. Any law student in America who's going for a law degree, and when they want to study the history of the Bank Holding Company Act, they'll see Wilshire Oil versus the Federal Reserve. It's still used as the classic textbook case.
Walk us through the castle a little bit. Tell us the different rooms.
Well, the guest rooms are all themed. We have an Egyptian one where you feel like you're in Pharaoh's tomb or Cleopatra's tomb. We have a Roman room with mythical creatures and urns and columns, distressed columns looking like ancient Rome. We have an Asian room, a Balinese room, a Moroccan loft, and the rest of the castle is all done medieval style, knights in shining armor, shields, and the like.
And a dungeon.
In a dungeon, yeah.
Yeah, you know my son, David. You've taken the tour with him.
Yes. And everything to give it that royal flavor, the tennis court, the volleyball court, and the basketball court, nets and rims and lines, everything's done in gold.
And then the party area is a courtyard with a beautiful fountain in the center, as I recall.
But it's a sculpture. It's a sculpture of my ex-girlfriend, who's still my best friend. And it shows her morphing from a beautiful naked woman into a dragon. It's one of a kind. It's the only one in the world. And a local artist, Robbie Braun, is the one who created it. I was lucky to find him because he had two specialties. I really lucked out with him. He had designed, and if you go into any natural history museum in the world, they'll show how cavemen and Cro-Magnon man became Magnon man, became Neanderthal man, and they show him going from an ape and standing upright and then getting hairy and becoming human. So he was good at showing transformations from ape to human in the history of mankind, evolution. And he was also specialized in nudes. So I found the perfect guy because here I was. I wanted to do a transition from nude to dragon, and you see the details. I mean, it's like watching the X-Men, the Alien movies, where you see them morph and gradually change from a human into some sort of alien type person. And in this case, you see the most soft, delicate, feminine hands becoming scaled and more reptilian and more dinosaur, more dragon-like. So it's just a spectacular piece of art that everyone loves and admires.
How tall is it?
It's life size. Every inch of her body was covered with plaster, section by section, to create it. It's got and it has of course, the dragon wings give it a huge wingspan, but it sits front and center in the castle. My favorite part of the castle because it ties it all together.
Yep.
Both beauty and medieval style.
What are your plans for the future? Do you have any other ideas you might bring to the Hamptons?
Well, one of the things, for my future is taking that book, Unstoppable, and I've just begun the process of having a pilot and series Bible written so we can bring it to television and have the whole world stream it and watch it. So I've just begun that process, and that's what I'm most involved in at the very moment, work-wise, and continuing to get the book read in every country in the world like the Diary of Anne Frank was. So far, I have Russia, China, and Romania that have licensed the book to translate it into their native languages and be sold in their bookstores in those countries. And I won't rest until every country in the world has Unstoppable in their hands and translated into their native language.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. These things last about 20 minutes, and we could talk a lot more about different things, but the time is up. You're out there in which part of Florida are you in? Where are you?
Miami Beach. The particular part is called South Beach.
And you'll be coming back up here in April?
May. Yeah, May, in time for the season.
Well, I'm talking to Ivan Wilzig, Sir Ivan, as he is as his alter ego, I guess is fair to say. And thank you very much for coming and being on the podcast with me.
Appreciate it greatly, and look forward to seeing you this summer.
You see me, I'll be there. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.